People should have the right to their opinion. They should have the right to live their life as they see fit, so long as they don't impose their choices on everyone else. We would live in a society then where people did what they chose to do without imposing what they chose to do on other people.
Well, yeah, there are many things that come from that, mate. I've just published my latest book. It's called The Trap. And I do go deeply into some of these things. And where does this come from? Where does it all come from? What is the force that is, in the end, driving what I call the global cult? Another question, why do these global cultists, and I've researched so many of them, why does it always kind of end up with Satanism, pedophilia too? There's reasons for that, but Satanism. Why do Satanists do their rituals to their gods? Why do they sacrifice people to their gods? Why did the ancients sacrifice people to the gods? Who are these bloody gods? And, you know, what I've been driving towards over this last 32 years, consciously doing this, is I want the engineers. Okay, I'll expose the oil rags, but I want the engineers. Where is this coming from? Because if you're going to stop an outcome, you have to eventually get to the cause of the outcome, and then the outcome stops. You know, people say, what's the solution? I'm not interested in solutions. Solutions invariably lead to other problems. I'm interested in the cause of what's happening. Then you don't need solutions, because once the cause is gone, the problem's gone. And so who are these bloody gods? And I'll tell you, you know, I go into this in detail in The Trap, but there's an audio version as well out at the same time. I concluded just after the turn of the millennium that we live in a simulation, that this is an enormously advanced version of a virtual reality computer game. And, you know, I can go into detail on how it works, really. And so I looked at it, and when I came out with this, there was only another guy called Nick Bostrom that I found anyway at Oxford University who'd concluded that we quite possibly live in a simulation. But since then, his version of it was different to mine, but we did agree on the simulation part of it. And in the decades that have passed since then, more and more mainstream scientists have started to look at this. There have been, you know, scientific studies that have asked the question, is it a simulation?
But the interest now is incredible. And that's why they're trying to shut me up, and it becomes more difficult to find a venue big enough for all the people that want to come.
And more have concluded that it is. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that this is a simulation, and the limits of the simulation at this level of it, the one we experience as the human world, is the speed of light. And the speed of light is not the fastest speed. I've been saying this for so long that possible, but it seems to be to so many because it's the fastest speed within this level of reality, this part of the simulation. And then in April of 2021, there was an article in Scientific American by an academic who said he's concluded that we live in a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation is the speed of light. I nearly fell off my chair when I read that all those years after I said it. And it was interesting. What I was saying, you know, way back is that what we call the laws of physics are actually only the rules encoded in the game, encoded in the simulation. That's what we call the laws of physics. That's why when people leave this level of the reality of what we call death, through near-death experiences, they describe a very different reality with a very different, quote, law of physics. Because this is the law of physics at this level of the game. It's just the rules of the game. And what this guy was pointing out in Scientific American is that you can write the rules of the game. Say you're writing the rules of a virtual reality game. You write the rules of the game, the limits of the game, what can be done and what can't be done. But you're still, he said, going to be limited in your possibilities by the processing speed of the game, the processing speed of the computer system that you're working with. And he pointed out, I say quite rightly, that the speed of light is the limit of the processing speed of this simulation. And so anyway, I started looking at this, and when I was writing The Trap, lots of things synchronistically happened that kind of started putting information in front of me. It's something I've experienced endlessly since 1990. And all this information coming to me was about the simulation, but more than that. I thought, hold on. Okay, I get that you can manipulate or entice consciousness into this simulation. Okay. What I don't get is that when you leave the simulation, and you've almost certainly, as with most people, if you look around the world, had a very unpleasant experience, why the bloody hell do you come back? What? Through reincarnation? Because, I've looked at reincarnation over a long period of time. I've read endless accounts of people who claim to have had previous lives, and even little kids with no knowledge of this world at all, who've in fine detail often have described lives they've had, their name, where, and all that stuff, and what they did. And researchers found that they were actually describing something real, that it did actually happen to the person they were talking about. So I kind of hope, yeah, okay, I get this reincarnation. And then I look, okay, so the Eastern religions believe in reincarnation. Okay, Christianity doesn't, but the Eastern religions do. So I looked at the Eastern religions and I thought, okay, what are you telling me? And they said, well, what you have to do is keep reincarnating onto this planet endlessly to learn lessons to become enlightened enough to get out of the cycle. Okay. And then I thought, well, hold on. According to mainstream science, compared with the size of the universe as it's projected to be, planet Earth is the equivalent of a billionth of a pinhead. So I'm being asked here to believe that I have to keep reincarnating onto a billionth of a pinhead to learn lessons to allow me to not have to keep reincarnating onto a billionth of a pinhead. Okay, well, I'm not sure I get that one. And also, if I'm learning lessons, right? Yeah, well, okay. So why don't I remember the previous lessons when I come in for the next one? Why am I always starting from a blank sheet of paper? And I looked at this and the synchronicity of information and experience that was coming to me while I was writing The Trap. One of the things I did was I read the accounts of people who'd been put into a hypnotic state and had been taken back to what they call the between life state, between human lives. And what I found compelling was the descriptions of the between life reality were compellingly common and similar. And I looked at what they were all saying and I thought, that's another bloody hierarchy. That's another hierarchy. That's not freedom. What's going on? And it seems to me that what we're looking at is a simulation that has multiple levels. It has the level that we experience in a body we call a human life, and it has what we call the spirit world. People call the spirit world. And the spirit world, or this level of it, not infinite reality, but this level of it that is another level of the simulation, is actually still a control system. And when you go out and you come back, you go out and you come back, round and round and round. Now, what the Eastern religions say is that you have to continue on this cycle until you reach a state of enlightenment that allows you to leave. Now, what does that mean? This simulation with its multiple levels is actually like everything else. It's a frequency band. It's a band of frequency. And as with the old analog radio and television, frequencies can interfere with each other if they're really close on the dial, or they can be in the same space but miles apart on the dial, and thus there's no interference. And so if you are in this band of frequency and you do not raise your own frequency to the point where you can leave it, you operate within it in your own state of frequency, then you're not going to get out of here. You're going to leave the body, but you're still going to be in the simulation. And so when they talk about you've got to reach a state of enlightenment, what are they talking about? You've got to reach a state of expanded awareness, perceptual awareness, that generates a frequency high enough for you to pass through the walls of the simulation. And there's an ancient kind of esoteric concept called the ring pass not. There, and you find the same thing in all the different cultures, that there is a level, they call it ring pass not in this case, that you can't get through it unless you are a high enough frequency to leave. So it's not just, Chris, in this human world that they're trying to control perception to hold your frequency down. They're also trying to do it when you leave the body. And this is why it's so important when people leave this reality that they are aware of the true I. They're aware of their true nature, aware of the bloody game, the trap, as I call it in the book, that they can get out of here. Otherwise, it's just recycling back. And the Eastern religions talk about reincarnation, the cycle, as a natural means of reaching enlightenment. I'm sorry, I beg to differ. It's a trap to keep us recycling.
Yeah, let's get it right. We're all the children of God. We're all created by God. We're created by the thoughts of God. When we think, we create an energy field. When we think thoughts of love, forgiveness, and peace, and all the things we want to bring to the world, we create a certain kind of very positive energy.
And why? Because it brings us to this other level, and you've also already mentioned part of it, the fourth dimension, or what's also called the astral dimension. You know, when we talk about other dimensions, that you kind of get the feeling, or people get the feeling, oh, other dimensions, oh, they're right out there. Well, some of them are, that are very, very much higher frequencies to the one we're experiencing. Not difficult. But other dimensions, like the fourth dimension, or the astral dimension, as it's called, are very close to this one, especially the lower levels of this astral fourth dimension, very close to this one. In fact, they basically bleed into each other and allow interference. And these demonic entities that I say are behind this simulation, and not just me. When you start to read ancient accounts, they call these demonic entities different names. Like Christians will call them demons. The Islamic world will call them the jinn. Yeah. The Gnostics called them archons, which was Greek for rulers. And you find these different names, but they're all describing the same force. And it operates in the lower levels of this astral dimension, this fourth dimension that bleeds into this one. And this is where it's coming from. And when the elite, as they perceive themselves, because they are children of the gods, the demons, when they do their satanic rituals, they're interacting with these demonic entities just outside of human sight. When I was in the caves, the Hellfire Caves, last Friday night, that's what I was talking about in there, as people will see in the Iconic program. That place is a haven for these demonic entities, because all the satanic ritual that's gone on in those caves, I mean, Sir Francis Dashwood in the 1700s, he had those caves, and they're a quarter of a mile in length, cut specifically, despite the cover story, to allow things to go on that no one else would know about, apart from those that were doing them. And when you are doing satanic rituals to the gods in the same area over and over and over again, it thins out the dimensional differences between our world and this lower fourth dimensional astral world.
When we think thoughts of hate, of all these other emotions, of anger, of fear, we create another kind of energy, a very destructive one, which, if it's in big enough quantities, destroys the very life force of creation.